I'm JinJa Birkenbeuel.
And I'm Esther Ikoro, and we're the hosts of the Honest Field Guide podcast.
Entrepreneurship is no joke. The journey is full of anticipation, failure, hope, and disappointment. You'll make money and be totally broke at the same time.
The Honest Field Guide podcast tells you the truth.
We know being an entrepreneur is crazy hard, and you will sometimes cry at dinner. Listen in to be inspired, laugh, and learn how to really thrive on your business journey.
Today on the Honest Field Guide, the state of diversity. What's it really about?
This is a emotional topic because some people want to talk about it and some people don't. There's a lot of news between the tech companies and other non-tech companies about diversity. We are talking about the state of diversity in the United States. We're not talking about the state of diversity in other countries. This is a unique moment in our history in the United States. So this is a great time to have this conversation. And we're definitely going to probably spend more time talking about, I think, supplier diversity and how it relates to business versus talent diversity, how employers, get diverse candidates or underrepresented candidates to work there. So that's two kind of sides of the house in the diversity conversation, right? I love that when we first were talking about this particular podcast conversation, when we were conceptualizing it, you asked me a question. You said, well, what is supplier diversity? Which made me laugh.
Yeah, I did. And you told me to Google it.
I said, Google it. But what's awesome about your
capital
question.
NVM.
And I had to actually Google NVM.
We're full circle.
Never mind.
This is a full circle moment.
I know, it was totally full circle.
You should have asked me and I would have told you to Google it.
I didn't want to see, the thing is, when I told you to Google what is supplier diversity and you put NVM and I was going to reply back, well, what is NVM? And I thought I better not do that.
Don't play yourself.
Don't play yourself. But anyway, what's funny about your question is, to me, the heart of this conversation, because you don't know what supplier diversity is, and neither does corporate America. They don't know what it is either, because if they did, there wouldn't be a need to have it, and we wouldn't be having,
the ethnic hair section at Walgreens wouldn't be one shelf.
What do we mean by supplier diversity? Who is a diverse supplier? A supplier diversity program is a proactive business program which encourages the use of minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ-owned, service-disabled veteran-owned, historically underutilized business, and Small Business Administration (SBA) defines small business concerns as suppliers. I think that they're also missing, members of tribal communities. I don't know how they're categorized, but that needs to be in there as well. But it's kind of a sterile definition. I'm also slightly disturbed that women-owned is separated from minority-owned because there are women minorities. So I'm always struggling a little bit with that conversation. I prefer the description to read underrepresented business owners, which include women of all ethnicities. That's the way I like to describe it, because it really is. All women of all ethnicities, including white women, are underrepresented in the supplier diversity space and in the talent diversity space. Women of all ethnicities, but particularly white women too. So it gets a little tricky when you start talking about supplier diversity, because people don't necessarily know how to put themselves in buckets. But, white women business owners in particular are being under leveraged. I don't think they necessarily know that. I don't know that women business owners understand that they're eligible and should be applying for, quote unquote, minority certification status, because there are extraordinary opportunities to work with large corporations, and they would benefit from being able to take credit for a woman-owned business supplying services to their company. So that's something to consider for all women that are listening, that that's a place where there's some challenges.
Let's use Walmart for an example. They want the people who not only provide them with products, but provide them with other types of solutions that are not necessarily from the realms that you would normally pick from. So if you need a supply chain solution, you want to find products to put in your giant multinational store, where are those smaller companies that you're using for those jobs coming from? I think one of the most common retorts is a company that's not as good gonna get a shot over a company that deserves it but is just full of white men, which is like absolutely not true. But I feel like those are the types of thought processes that happen in people's heads when you start talking about diversity.
My company, Burt Creative, I helped Solar City, which has subsequently been reacquired by Tesla, launch their own diversity and inclusion practice because they had an effort where they needed to find more women and minorities to work at Solar City to help with the delivering of solar panels. And it was interesting working on this program because I was able to talk with leadership around, this is the kind of language that you need to deploy when you're trying to encourage women to take a dangerous job installing solar panels on the top of a 100-foot building. I mean, there's a whole different type of communication that you have to, engage in to have a woman work at a company like Solar City, in the field, right? It's not like you're asking a woman to work in the marketing department.
In the article about that on Burt Creative, you talked about having to get corporate buy-in.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
Well, the buy-in.
So someone at the top says we need to do this somewhere, but then you have to be like, this isn't just about just having more women in the room. Like there's a legit. So how do you even gauge that and begin to have that conversation with people who are already in the company, but aren't necessarily sold on the idea?
Right. And I, it's a great question. What was exciting first and foremost is that they recognized that they needed to have a company like mine that has some competency around diversity, inclusion, recruitment, tactics and strategies and ideas. And that was their first step of, that's the right thing to do. But the other piece is that I did bring people to my team that have extraordinary skills and background around, the use of language when you're creating content to understand how to reach diverse and underrepresented talent and suppliers. And that's a real critical step, just to kind of say, we have a team that knows how to talk about this for you, and we can align what we're talking about with your brand values. So, understanding the brand values of the company and their ultimate goals is critical to us being able to do our best work. But the other piece really gets back to the first question we asked the company was, we need for leadership to define diversity. What is diversity to you? What does it mean? Because when you understand where people are coming from with their understanding of diversity, you can then go forward and try to solve the problem, because there's a lot of issues around diversity within companies. A lot of people's definition of diversity are completely the opposite. I mean, some people might walk in a room, and see one African-American person and say, we have a diverse company here. And, that is not really necessarily the definition of diversity from the standpoint of, an African-American person that sees one Black person. They might say, that's not really how I define diversity. So, you have to get to the question of how do you define diversity? So for companies that are, embarking on a supplier diversity program or trying to create one, you really need to understand what your leadership believes is diversity. How is it defined at the company? Because you have to have a foundation for that conversation before you can move forward.
It's almost like we've talked about diversity so much, we've talked it into a corner where it's mostly framed in the public narrative about being like, everyone should have a place, where it's like, no, you will have a better business. Literally, you will have a better business, better products. You reach a wider audience. Your brand will be stronger. Your employees will be more engaged, and there will be a better working environment. And the more information you have, the more perspectives you have, the easier it will be for you to come to a place of accurate problem solving. If you are the best at what you do, the market speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. A company like Carol's Daughters that was sold to L'Oreal, that wasn't just them wanting to acquire a brand that represented diversity. It was them acquiring a brand that was very successful in a market that they weren't the best versed in.
And you know what's beautiful about that?
The pure business of it made sense for them.
The great thing about the Carol's daughter conversation to me is, you know, it makes me wonder if Unilever, for example, watched that acquisition and watched the success of that acquisition, you know, on the shelves of Target and said, you know what? This is a model that actually worked, and we really need to take seriously Shea Moisture. And that is a brand that is blowing up. And, you know, the founder of Shea Moisture is now paying it forward, and he's got all kinds of stuff going on to help African American women find funding. Mm-hmm. He's using his leverage now, and he's going into, you know, with his Unilever relationships and saying, I need to do this. And I'm sure that he's getting all kinds of things to make it happen. So, you know, he gets it. Yeah. You know, and we think about that in the supplier diversity space. If Unilever didn't have a man like that, a black man like that with vision to help them see, you know, to help them understand.
Just call it to their attention.
Look at this. Look at what
Little
he's
things.
helping us see. Look at what he's helping us build. Yeah. Look at these relationships we didn't know about, or we didn't know enough about, or we didn't trust because they weren't with us on the golf course. But there's always this kind of underlying message, you know, and even from my standpoint. So I'm a woman, I'm African American owner. And I know that when I'm going in on opportunities, that just inherently the way that I work, no matter what I'm going in on, whatever door I'm going through, whatever it looks like, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to over deliver, and I'm not going to let the client down who brought me in the first place. However, there is always this potential for, you know, me going in on a project, you know, or an assignment with someone who's taking a risk. And, you know, what if I do make a mistake? What's going to happen to them if I'm not, you know, delivering way above and beyond what they're asking for? You know, how are they going to look? How is it going to come back on them? One little tiny slip, right? Underrepresented suppliers and underrepresented talent can't make mistakes. And that's tough.
How do you make room for innovation? Because in the process of innovating, failure is inherent because you're going to have to try things. That's a company culture issue.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I feel like when you have that conversation at a place like Salesforce, that's used to taking risks, that's used to understanding, like, this is the landscape. We're going to find the best and the brightest that happen to also be. That's the thing, is that the conversation that you have has to have that happen to be component to it. Because if you lead with diversity, you automatically create a culture where it's just about making sure that everybody has a seat around the table, which doesn't always translate in a corporate environment. But when you lead with excellence and say, we want people who are cream of the crop, but also diverse, it puts more weight on the due diligence and the research that has to happen.
Right. And so I agree. And so my piece is, sometimes I wonder, and I was having a conversation with a business leader in Chicago this week. And, you know, the question was, is my business being hurt by diversity work or being helped by diversity work? You know, am I earning more market share and a better brand with my company, Burt Creative, by leading with the conversation around I'm a woman-owned, minority-owned business, or is it hurting me against other companies that don't want to know that or don't care? You know, like, what is the answer? And you know, the leader said to me, if you looked at the percentage of money that is allocated to diverse suppliers at any corporation, my answer to you is yes, it's hurting you. Because companies are allotting, you know, less than 1% to their supplier diversity spend. And I don't even know where that number came from. And you know, I'm delighted if somebody comes back and gives me a real number, because it's not enough money. So then it becomes, why are we doing this? Why are we representing ourselves as minority-owned businesses. What is the point? Because if it's not translating into if it's not translating into real wealth development for the company and the family and the community that you're in, you know, if it's the whole conversation around, you know, crabs in a barrel, we're all, you know, trying to grab the same crumb. Every one of us is in the barrel grabbing the same crumb, and that crumb is 0.008% of the actual spend on the company. I mean, it's like, what in the world? Like, this is insane. And if you know that the crabs in the barrel, like, hey, you know what? I know you. I've seen you before. Different. Oh my God, you're my friend.
Yeah.
That's my girl over there. She's down there trying to get the crumb too. How is this going to work out for us? You know what I mean? You're asking yourself, where is this going? Where is this really, really going? And, you know, there are companies that are doing, you know, a decent job of spending with underrepresented businesses, right? Some of them appear on the Billion Dollar Roundtable. What is the Billion Dollar Roundtable? These are companies that have spent at least $1 billion with underrepresented owned suppliers, which include women of all ethnicities. Their definition is the Billion Dollar Roundtable was created in 2001 to recognize and celebrate corporations that achieve spending of at least $1 billion with minority and women-owned suppliers. The BDR promotes and shares best practices in supply chain diversity excellence through the production of white papers. In discussions, the members review common issues, opportunities, and strategies. The BDR encourages corporate entities to continue growing their supplier diversity programs by increasing commitment and spending levels each year. The BDR inducts new members biannually. Their mission is to drive supplier diversity excellence through best practice sharing and thought leadership. So what I love about the Billion Dollar Roundtable is they actually list the logos of the companies that made it. And what I notice about this list with the logos is not the companies that are on here, but it's the companies that are missing that I'm shocked and surprised. Because a couple of the companies that are missing, they've been doing business for 100 plus years, with most of their customers being, you know, Black and brown people across the world. So why are they not on this table, at this table with the $1 billion people? So anyway, Adient, Boeing, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Comcast Universal, or rather Comcast NBC Universal, Ford, Kaiser Permanente, PG&E, P&G, Toyota, General Motors, CVS Health, Kroger, Honda, AT&T, Lear, Verizon, Walmart. Did I say Toyota? Honda, IBM, Merck, Johnson Controls, Exelon, Dell, Cummins, Avid Budget Group, and Bank of America. So, you know, that's actually, you know, Esther, that's actually not that many companies if you think about it.
No, it's not that many companies at all.
That's not that many companies. Why aren't there more companies at the Billion Dollar Roundtable? What's up?
That's the thing. I think that it's almost like a longitudinal study that hasn't gone far enough yet for other people to get the picture.
Yeah.
You know how, let's take smoking, for instance. Pretty early on, people were like, smoking causes cancer. And it kind of took a couple generations to be like, no, this actually is for everybody to be like, yeah, we're going to stop smoking in hospitals, you know? So it's one of those things where these are the early adopters. And I mean, just Kaiser, for instance, last time I was in a space where I was like, wow, this company has some really good people behind them and it's really women led. Kaiser was one of their partners.
Interesting.
So
I forgot one company.
Oh, what is it?
A big one.
Uh-oh.
And it's really because they don't have a word. There's a picture.
Is it a picture of a fruit?
Yes, it is.
Is it apple?
Yes, it is. I totally missed that because they have a grade out.
Apple just snuck in there.
They just kind of snuck in, and I think they just made it last year.
Yeah.
They literally just made it. And of course, they're now the most valuable company in the world.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, they need to be hitting more than $1 billion. They should be spending $3 billion with, you know, but that's just my personal opinion, not the views of any company that I work for.
Okay. That's funny. Yes.
But, you know, yeah, it's your point. It's like,
the proof is in the pudding. So people who get it right now know that it's good for business ultimately, especially in the way that the world is going and how brand identity is evolving and how corporate identity is evolving and the transparency and visibility that that relates to. The customer journey and the customer loyalty has a lot more to do with just the product. We're having relationships with brands as entire companies now.
It's true. Yeah. At every, not
At
only
every
in
level.
the supply chain place, but
You know.
all over the place.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to look at this list because some companies are like, wow, they're not even on this list. These are companies that have been in business for like 132 years or 140 years. And they have a huge diverse, black and brown population buying their products. They are not on the Billion Dollar Roundtable, which means that they have not spent $1 billion with women owned or underrepresented businesses. Let's not name the business. Oh, no, let's not do that. We don't want to. Companies, you know who you are when you're not on the Billion Dollar Roundtable. You know who you are. And the ones that are on there, they should be proud of it. They're proud. But some of the companies are like, look, we don't need to brag about this. This is how we operate. This is what we do. And we need all companies to be like that, right? That's what needs to happen. Now, there is a question of the companies on the Billion Dollar Roundtable. How are they defining diversity? But we're not going to get into that because we're just happy that we all made it. But, we don't know what's in their little diversity bucket,
Are you part of a mastermind?
I am the mastermind.
Okay. Not what
no,
I mean.
No, I'm not.
Okay,
well, let me answer that. So I've not participated in a formal mastermind. However, I have informal masterminds with my community and my network and my business advisors and my colleagues and other members of businesses that I speak with on a regular basis. And I do go to, workshops and retreats like the one that I participated in at Dartmouth, right? I mean, that was a giant mastermind of amazing business owners. So, but go ahead and explain your specifics around masterminds, because I do think they're beneficial to some people and some business owners.
As diverse certified businesses or businesses that are owned by underrepresented groups, not leading with, I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that, and trying to lead with just your work, your excellence, there is a strategy to getting in front of those larger corporations that would use you as a supplier, because historically, even if you just lead with your excellence, you might not be on the radar of the supplier. So there has to be a strategy to get you in front of the person so that they can see the excellence of what you do and how you execute your work. My question is, are there masterminds for suppliers and business owners that help them understand how to do things like approach corporations?
Well, I don't know if I'd call them a mastermind, but there are organizations in the United States. One is called the National Minority Supplier Development Council, and the other one's called WeBank, and that represents women business owners. And there are some other organizations like National Association of Women Business Owners that provide networking opportunities, but these groups aren't technically masterminds, but they are advocacy groups for women and underrepresented business owners. And they convene, one-on-one speed dating sessions between corporations and business owners. They have, giant workshop events where several businesses come together with a specific topic, and they talk to small business owners to find out, okay, you're represented by the National Minority Supplier Development Council. We know that you're certified because they have officially certified you as an underrepresented business owner. So because of that, you're welcome to our club and we'd like to talk to you. And by the way, we are a corporate member of these organizations, so we pay money to meet people like you, because we know that you've been vetted and you've been cleared by this organization, which means that you're legit and you're good. And so those are opportunities to kind of join a little bit of a mastermind with a specific goal of connecting, underrepresented businesses to large corporations. And so that kind of, it does work for many. There are suppliers that have the exact right product that fits within a company's supply chain in the exact right place. And they have extraordinary success. So for example, there are companies that their business focuses on working with the automotive industry, and they know exactly where they fit in the supply chain, and they're able to go right to that place and say, this is how I can supply goods and services. And that company, like an automotive company, can say, oh, we know exactly how you fit in. So here's a big gig because you know what, we need you because, you know, we've got to have a, you know, diverse supplier, blah, blah, blah. And it's a bonus because you're really excellent anyway. So, you know, there's just a lot of ways to kind of, you know, skin the apple. I didn't want to say cat because that's just not nice.
And I don't know why you're skinning apples. What are you making, pie? Weird. I wish there was a deliberate mastermind for a small business owner, a woman who's baking her energy bars in her whatever, and she's trying to start this business and it's really good and it's selling really well. How do you get her into a Starbucks? How do you get her in a place where she can even show her product to like a Whole Foods or a Walmart or something like that? I know that I listen to these, you know, stories and read these stories about how people like Lara Bar did it, for instance, or RX Bar, the strategy that they took, but there's not like a consistent place to understand, here's how you approach a large corporation. Here's how you put together. Walmart has a great guidebook how suppliers should approach them. I have to be more specific and deliberate about how I work my relationships.
Yeah. Relationships are critical. It depends on, you know, your cultural environment, how you were raised, and what are the norms, you know, in your family, because it's hard and difficult and challenging sometimes for certain cultures to ask for what they need.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean,
you gotta retrain your brain.
You really do. And sometimes if you can't retrain your brain, you need to have a friend that can help you retrain it. And I'll give you an example. I was at Dartmouth a couple weeks ago for a really amazing business retreat, and I met so many stunningly outstanding, above and beyond people and business owners of excellence that I thought, this is how I need to spend my days with amazing people like this, because I got fed a lot of, you know, beautiful, wonderful things, and it was just a chemically you know, perfect situation. I was blown away by it. But here's what happened at one particular big giant training session we had. I was sitting next to this super, super smart, amazing woman with a fantastic company doing all kinds of great work in IT, federal contracts, state contracts, regional, commercial, private, public, you name it. She was out there. And there was someone, you know, giving a discussion about a topic that she was very knowledgeable about. And I heard her whispering, she's like, I don't agree. I don't think that's true. Or I don't agree with this. Or, you know, she was saying things that I looked over and I said, okay, can you please stand up and speak louder? I hear what you're saying. And I think you're right. I agree with what you're saying. And, you know, she's like, oh, you know, can you ask for me? And I said, no. And I literally took my hand and I put it on her elbow and I lifted her up. I said, stand up now and ask your question and please give your thoughts about what this person is saying. And she did it. And I was even flagging down the person with the microphone to help her stand up and ask the question and to say what she had was on her mind. And later, you know, she thanked me. She says, you know what? I need more of that.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
it can be a habit that's reinforced by other people who have the same habit.
Yes. And she said, and you know, she said to me, you know, culturally, this is not how I was raised. And I said, well, you know what? There was a lot of things that I wasn't raised to do, but I do them because I have a business now and I can't think like that. I'm a business owner. I can't have that kind of, you know, that stuff interfering with my ability to make money and build relationships and get what I need. Especially if you're a woman, if you're standing there and you're not asking questions and asking for things you need.
You're not aggressive.
And I feel like the only way that any of us that are underrepresented going through the United States, doing business in the United States, in corporations, which are they're led and run and operated and started and launched, by white Americans. It is the antithesis of business in some respects, to think and to expect and to act like this is going to help us get more, because it's never worked. It never will. And it's not funded. I mean, it's just this work to get suppliers to work for companies doesn't, the money is not allotted to the people that are really working hard in these companies to find diverse suppliers and diverse talent. There's just, especially suppliers, the talent side, a lot of these companies do federal contracts, and there are, rules and guidelines to say, if you're going to have $1 trillion contract with the federal government, you have to hire disabled veterans. You have to hire, African-American women. You have to have, Hispanic Americans working at your company in order to do business with us. And you also have to have some subcontractors that are underrepresented suppliers that are helping you build for us, right? So, that's a situation where there is true incentive for them to do this. And so there is money aligned with companies that do federal contracts, right? There's money put to those companies to say, look, we need a team internally in this company that can help us leverage underrepresented talent, because we just won $1 trillion contract for the federal government, and we can't go in there unless we have a diverse team doing this. It's just not going to work. So that's a situation where, that absolutely does make sense. And there's a little more funding around that, especially on the disabled veteran side. But aside from that, there's just, the money's not there. So what are you going to do? If the money's not there as an underrepresented business, it goes back to what you said. You just have to be kick-ass. Diversity goes much deeper than skin.
Oh, definitely. It goes way deeper than skin.
Yeah,
it's about diversity of thought.
It really is. I mean, I know that some people they grit their teeth and they start white knuckle flying when people say we need diversity of thought, because that sounds like an excuse to not focus on, ethnic diversity. Yeah. But there does need to be diversity of thinking even among, underrepresented people, because you can have a lot of underrepresented people in a room, but they're still lock, stock, and barrel, aligned with your thinking, which is, how is that really helping? How is that any different? Right. So, one of the things that I would suggest when, with some of these larger companies is, if you can get people that are trying their hardest to uncover their bias and see people for who they really are, that's the first step, because you're going past, the physical to the, how can you really add value, which does really get to the, I need some kick-ass people to work here. And what an absolute amazing bonus that, you're a woman, in an underrepresented group, providing goods and services to my company, because, you are kick-ass. So when you have underrepresented groups working for a company, they are your eyes and boots on the ground, because they're coming from, communities that might be different from, the majority ownership, and they're able to offer perspectives and thought processes and, ways of seeing the world that can help a company have vision in ways that they can't get unless they have, women working for them. I mean, women think very differently about risk, which can help a company assess whether or not they should take A, B, or C path, right? Yeah. I mean, so having a woman in the room when you're making strategic decisions about the direction of a company would be critical for the company to, have guidance and, have an understanding of, we really never thought of it from that way. Let's take this into consideration before we make this major decision to switch this particular thing. So internal diversity is definitely critical. But I also think that when you talk about supplier diversity, you have to educate people that work at a company to encourage their company to buy supplies and services from women-owned businesses and underrepresented businesses that include, what I said earlier, LGBTQ, African-American-owned businesses, Latino and Latina-owned businesses. I mean, people inside a company have to push for that as well. That includes men who work inside the companies have to start asking their companies to buy goods and services for women-owned businesses. I mean, how do you get to the place of, a person that works at a company to start making a demand on their company. I want to see more women-owned businesses supplying to this company. For example, Starbucks, right? Mm-hmm. So Starbucks has a supplier diversity program, and there are women-owned businesses that supply food products to their stores across the United States. Somebody at Starbucks made a decision, we're going to be increasing our diverse suppliers of, our snacks that we're selling in our stores or some of our products. I mean, somebody made the decision. We need to find out, how do you get to people that make those kinds of decisions? Because that's going to transform the country. Because when you start having large corporations like Apple and Google and Starbucks and McDonald's and the Walmarts of the world and the Coca-Colas and the General Motors, when they start recognizing the extreme value of working with diverse suppliers, those diverse suppliers not only can transform their families from the work that they get from those large companies that they earn, but they can also be a model in their communities and transform communities, which means that other people see the success that that family is having with their business, doing business with a company like General Motors. And then that transformed their minds around, oh my gosh, this company's doing business with this minority, this underrepresented family, which means that, you know what? I actually might want to buy a car from General Motors now, because they're really putting effort into helping these communities and families thrive. And it's beyond hiring an underrepresented person to work there. It's really about deciding, my big, giant, large corporation is investing in the wealth development of that minority-owned business. And that's really critical. If you have a company that decides that not only are they going to build their own wealth, but they're going to help build the wealth of an underrepresented business owner, that's a huge, huge mind shift in my estimation, because that's the place that I think America's been the greatest, is helping, businesses and entrepreneurs succeed, to help them win. That's how we've built the country, by businesses building themselves up and helping employ people and making things better in communities and neighborhoods and building infrastructure. So, I don't know how to get to that place.
Yeah, me neither.
We're going to solve poverty with this podcast.
I lead with my excellence. On the other end, as a corporate structure, you should lead with wanting to understand more and wanting to diversify more and understanding why that's important. We can't be both sides of the conversation. So we as business owners, we as, underrepresented groups of people who have technical skills or professional services or build products and things like that, we can't be the ones saying there needs to be more diversity necessarily. We just have to be the ones that show up with the bar of excellence that's super high. It has to be a two-way conversation, because otherwise then we are having a conversation with ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the question is, if these companies don't actually care or understand yet the importance of diversity, then where do we go from here? I don't know.
I know. I mean,
we can't both be like this. I have to be the optimistic one, and then you can put a pin in it. But now I'm like, I don't know, because it's really gloomy and it's really muggy outside and I'm tired and I'm just like, you know what?
Listen, this is like, I'm telling you, this is an epic battle of survival, and it happens every day, and more Black people, Latinos and Latinas, LGBTQ, it's not working for us in the corporate structures, and we're going out on our own. And when we get there, all the promises that we saw in the corporate structure.
There's a tumbleweed with a briefcase just rolling through, and it got a contract. For the small business owners, what would we say to them as far as ways to get in front of companies that are either pushing these efforts forward or not pushing these efforts forward? Because even the ones that are pushing the efforts forward only use a very tiny fraction of their actual energy towards that. So what are some strategies that you can share to try to get into companies as a supplier that's from a background that would be considered diverse?
One of the things I do recommend to all people that are entrepreneurs and networkers and small business owners, when they're out in the field, if you have an opportunity to be at a famous event with, celebrities, it's really easy. It's very easy to go and beeline to the celebrity and hand the celebrity your business card and say, hey, you know what? I would love to do some work with you. Let me be your fashion consultant, or let me do the, let me be your accountant, or, I have some strategies for you on how you can break into the market. The celebrity is not the person to talk to. You need to stand back for a minute, look around the room and see who are the people working for the celebrity and how are they acting? Look for the wallflower that's kind of checking you out. That's the person you need to go to. And I say that because when you think about going towards the grand Fortune 500 brands, which are like trying to catch whales, maybe it's not the whale you need to catch. Maybe it's the person or the company supplying the whale, or maybe it's
Whale supply company.
Exactly.
It's my new startup. It's the Uber of whales.
Take a look at, companies that are mid-market perhaps, where can you find mid-market companies? In Chicago, we have something called the Cranes, top list of private owned companies in Illinois. You'll find lots of opportunities at those companies to find out how you can do business with them, because they have plenty of revenue and they are in positions where they're like, we need this, we need that. And they're looking for suppliers. They're not necessarily interested in diverse suppliers. They're just looking for people to help them keep their business running, right? So they're not as inspired or as incentivized as a Fortune 500 company, for example, who, are supplying billions of dollars of products and services to the federal government. So they're not as incentivized. They're really just looking for people to help them, run their business. So, I would look there too. That's the number two thing I would do, is look at some mid-market companies. And then, number three would be to, look at your network and see with the people that who can help you get to a table with smart and interesting people, whatever they look like, wherever they come from. Where are the smart and interesting people in my environment? Where are the ones that are doing cool things? How do I find out? You can obviously find out by what they're doing on social media, but you can also pick up the phone and call and ask. Just, hey, you know what? I have this issue and I really want your ideas on what you think I need to do to get the help. And you'd be amazed when you ask, the person will come back and say, you know what? I'm on the board of this amazing organization and we have an event coming up. I'd love for you to be a guest at my table. Can you join me? And you'll say yes, because they know what you need and they know what you're asking for because you asked. And you know what? When you ask, people know where you're coming from and there's no confusion and they'll help you. And then the last thing is definitely get involved with some of these organizations. Some of them are effective depending on what city you live in and what region you live in. And some of them aren't so great. It just really depends. You really have to look around and sort of say, this organization has done a tremendous job of placement. They are responsive, they return calls, they show up. They have great email communications. National Minority Supplier Development Council is a national organization. They have different chapters in different cities. WeBank is a national organization. They have different chapters in different cities. So you do have to ask around and see which city has the most effective chapter, because they're not all great. They can't all be great, So those are kind of my top four things for what you can do. There's a couple of companies in the United States, I think, that are doing a tremendous job leading on the conversation around supplier diversity. I don't know that they're, getting high numbers of diverse suppliers, right? Like, I don't know if they're actually, killing it in that space, but I do know that they seem to be making very intentional, mindful efforts on how can we engage and attract and retain diverse suppliers. I think Google is doing a particularly amazing job in this space. Now, I just fully disclose that they are a client of mine. And they're not
that.
What?
That proves the point.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
Sort of.
I am, a boutique brand strategy. So, my company's brought in to help them think about things and concepts and ideas. And that's what I love to do. I love helping companies think. But, they may not be activating as many businesses to bring them in to hire them, but they're a new tech company, and the tech industry, as everyone knows that's in the space, is struggling with diversity, right? I mean, this is what all the tech companies are struggling with. So, but the work that they're doing in partnership with other companies, the information they're sharing, the team internally at Google that's working on diversity, I mean, they are powerful, motivated, inspired, entrepreneurial thinking unicorns. And I mean, they are hustling to try to lead the country in this conversation. And I think they're doing a great job, and they have the spans to do this. And I speak about this not on behalf of Google, and I'm not representing Google when I say this. I'm saying this as a person in marketing and branding that's looking at the landscape and I'm looking for signals. I'm a small, diverse business. I'm looking for signals that I'm on the right track, and I've got to find something that tells me yes. I'm looking for the yes. Okay. We talked about this, the yin and the yang. I think Salesforce is doing a tremendous job, not only on the talent side, but on the partnership and collaborative side. They're doing a great job, and you can look up the work that Salesforce is doing. They have a tremendous website about their diversity efforts. It's, even the language is powerful that they're using online.
Yeah.
Walmart is leading. So when I worked with Solar City to help them work on their recruitment efforts for diverse talent, Walmart was a guy. They said, we need to be looking at what Walmart's doing. Walmart has a real powerful disabled veteran program as well. So they're leading in this space. Another company I think that is sort of quiet about their diversity efforts is McDonald's. I mean, so McDonald's doesn't necessarily have a diverse supplier space, but they have built the wealth of so many businesses of color through their franchise ownership. That's huge. I mean, there's millionaires have been made from McDonald's, and they're black and brown, and they own restaurants. They have powerful talent diversity efforts internally, and they have workshops and masterminds for other companies to help them understand, how did you build such a diverse company? What did you do to get here? McDonald's leads on this. So there are companies out there, and they're and McDonald's, I don't even think they're in the Billion Dollar Roundtable, but they're a huge company, and the families and careers and legacies that they are leaving behind, specifically related to this conversation, is pretty powerful, and you can't deny it. Microsoft is doing a great job on diversity. Maybe the work that they've been doing historically will help inform their acquisition of LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, needs to do a better job with diversity, not only on the talent side, but in terms of their conversations that they're having online, because more and more people of color are going to LinkedIn for information. So there's hope, and there are companies that are leading that can help inspire. And for mid-market companies, they should be looking at companies like that too, to get ideas, to learn, and to learn how they can be better.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Honest Field Guide, where we discussed diversity and what it's about from a corporate perspective and from a supplier perspective, and the relationships that form that in between. Join us on the next episode, where we will be discussing Twitter for business.
Wow, Twitter for business.
That bird's flying the coop. All right.
Thanks for joining us.
The Honest Field Guide podcast is produced by Burke Creative, written and created by JinJa Birkenbeuel and Esther Ikoro. The podcast is recorded in the innovation and technology capital of the Midwest, Chicago, at Stomping Ground Studios in Ukrainian Village.
Original music is written by and provided courtesy of Utah Carol. Follow Honest Field Guide on Instagram and Twitter. The opinions expressed on the Honest Field Guide are opinions only and only represent the views of JinJa Birkenbeuel and Esther Ikoro.